Welcome back. We've got our 2021 travel outlook. We've got lots of Disney coming by way of Joe Cheung and lots of extreme partisan politics and insight from Gideon. So I think I've been a big fan of Rick Steves' theme about travel as a political act. And I think we've all seen this year that travel and politics and life are inseparable in many ways. And so this will be a wide-ranging discussion with the theme about what's coming for next year. Crystal balls out. Welcome both.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
So, Joe, Disney. My question is, I enjoy Disney, but it's like an every few years thing. I've been to the parks. What's the magic that gets somebody to the point where they're creating a podcast on it? They're going every year. They love that return every March, every August, whenever they go.
Yeah, I think it checks off a lot of the same endorphins as travel planning does. Like for people who love to, I guess, hack their way into travel, that's why you'll see the Venn diagram kind of overlap between travel hackers and people who are into Disney, just because there's like so many. It's a bit different during the pandemic. It's actually simpler to go to Disney during the pandemic right now. Not that I would actually recommend that, but when during normal times, there are so many different rules and like hacks and like backdoor tricks that you can do that, it really releases a lot of the same endorphins that you get when you like book a great mileage run, if you're that type of person, or like a mistake fare, or you get a great hotel rate. There's all of that. And then I think, one of the things that I love most about Disney is it's just a place where my wife called me a man child yesterday. It was not a compliment. I think I was stuffing Doritos in my face or something like that. I don't know what I was doing, but very man childy. Disney is a place where I can be a man child and no one will look at me twice. But joking aside, like it's also a place where I can go with my parents and my kids and like everyone can enjoy it. And, like it's one of the few places where my parents like are like less buttoned up. They can be more relaxed. They can be kids. So, it's just, I think as a family destination, it's great, even though, I enjoy going without my family as well when we're not in the middle of a pandemic.
So that's actually a question that I have for a lot of people that are really into Disney, because I met or experienced most people like that through the travel hacking community, trying to find some way to entertain their growing families for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks on a Disney cruise at a time. But I also know there are a lot of people that sort of like take that love of Disney into their adult life. So I guess I'm kind of wondering, like, it's obviously like great to be able to spend time with your kids and your parents at Disney, but like, would you want your kids to be like begging to go to Epcot Center instead of actually going to France when they were 16 or 20 or 25? Do you think that there's anything that like happens to somebody's like idea of travel when they sort of like grow up in that environment?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I would come at it from two angles. Like the first angle is like a family like mine where, like we take our kids to Europe. We travel, like we're travel hackers and we like to travel internationally. So, Disney is just another on the list of like many destinations that the kids have been. So yes, I definitely would be disappointed if they're 16 and, like if say like 1 out of every 3 or 4 trips, they were like, I'd rather go to Disney World, that's fine. Right. But if like 3 out of every 4 trips, they would rather go to Disney World than Paris or something like that, then yeah, I totally agree. I would be disappointed in that. However, there's a whole like other subset of people who are not us, who do not travel internationally, that in like a bizarre way, like going to Epcot is like kind of their first introduction. For those who don't know, Epcot has this place called the World Showcase, which is, a semi-Americanized version. However, like before the pandemic, they actually like employed people from the respective countries that are in Epcot. Unfortunately, they were all laid off due to the pandemic. So it is not as authentic right now. But you know, like I took my kids to the China pavilion and I like forced them to speak to the, you know, people who work there in Chinese. You know, it's just like because I'm just mean like that, right? So there's another subset of people who, you know, Disney is kind of their first taste of something outside of the culture that they know, and so, you know, for people like that, then you know, if that inspires them to travel, like I don't think that's a bad thing. Now, going back to your original question, though, I will reiterate that if my kids, who I've forced to travel overseas already, you know, if they, you know, only want to go to Disney World when they have like grown, then yeah, I think I have screwed up and done something wrong. But you know, I think as part of like an overall portfolio of travel, it's not a bad place to have on your list.
And along those lines, I remember on Drew Travel's Free podcast a year or two ago, Dave Homiak, bike guy, another travel hacker, talked about the age when he had his daughter just plan their Tokyo trip, and that included a Disneyland visit. So when's the age, or how do you determine when a child is ready to take on that? Okay, you're going to plan our Disney trip. You're gonna, whether it's Florida, whether it's France. Have you reached that moment yet?
I mean, that was a great podcast episode, by the way, where, you know, I think Dave's daughter was like 12 or 13 at the time, and he just told her to like plan the whole trip. In fact, that was inspiring to me. You know, she is my oldest is turning 8 soon. I still think it's like a little too young. However, with this whole online schooling business, she has gotten super adept with a computer. So like a year ago, I was like, there's no way she would be able to do that by the time she was 11 or 12. But now that she's like so adept with the computer, like we're already at the point where she's teaching me how to use Zoom, even though like I'm pretty adept at Zoom, like, you know, because I teach my class on Zoom, but she's still teaching me things about Zoom that I haven't figured out. So since she is becoming so technologically adept, now I'm like, oh, maybe when she is 12, she could like plan a trip. You know, I know Kenny, who lives in Texas, Kenny BSAT. You know, what he does with his kids is every year on their birthday, he lets them choose a destination to go to. It has to be serviced by Southwest because he will only take them with the companion pass. So 2 good parenting lessons right there. But like stuff like that, you know, using travel to get to know your kids better. I love that. And so what Dave did, forcing his daughter to plan the whole trip. I don't know if I'd be that bold. You know, we'll see. We'll give her a few years, see if she earns that trust to do that. But, you know, I've tried to travel with, you know, I've traveled with each of my kids alone. The only one I haven't traveled with is the young one. But that's because of the pandemic. Otherwise, I was planning to go somewhere with her this year. So, you know, and she's only just turned 3. So, you know, I do think that's a great thing to do, and love that Dave did that. And, you know, look forward to experimenting with my own kids and creating travel itineraries in the future.
They're gonna, as you said, you're a man child. When they start planning, they're gonna have to tell you, we'll get to your ride later, but first we're gonna do for the others. I think the roles will be reversed pretty soon. And I've noticed. I mean, you cover so many podcasts now: Savorosity, Miles to Memories, Disney Deciphered. That there's that extra bit of passion in your voice that comes out in Disney that I can tell. There's that extra thing compared to the points. Gideon, I'm wondering, your passion seems to be on the analytical side of points and figuring out something elaborate and also perhaps economically rational, where many of us in this hobby do incredibly irrational things.
Excuse me, I was told there would be no math.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a math example, I just will not do the Bank of America premium rewards about the 2.62% or whatever thing, because I feel like if I did that for everything, I would just be giving up on all of my travel dreams, and then it's just a cashback, which is, maybe it's rational, but I would feel like I lose every spark that I enjoy about it if that became my only pursuit.
Yeah, I think that a big part of it is that you stop thinking about it that way, or you feel better about thinking about it that way, I guess, when you dial into the programs that you think give you like the best redemptions or that make you happiest, because there's a certain amount of like, I guess, like consistency. And obviously the Southwest people are the best example of this, because they're always getting their 2.7 cents, and then they have their companion passes, so they're always getting their 5.4 cents. And
but are they the least rational? Because I would guess that the year that some of them get their first companion pass, they spend more cash on travel in that year than probably their entire life.
Yeah, but I don't think that's necessarily irrational, is what I'm saying. Is that the point of travel hacking for me is to pay as little as possible for the trips you want to take. And for a lot of people, until they fill up their travel hacking inventory of skills, whether that's on the the earning side or the redeeming side, they haven't hit that number of trips that they want to take. And then obviously a lot of people go way past that and take trips that they don't want to take, that they pay way too much for, that they really shouldn't take those trips. They really shouldn't burn the jet fuel. They really shouldn't eat the foie gras. But I think that like definitely like the first period of time that you spend just learning what's possible in terms of travel, those are the years that you're actually least likely to waste points. Those are the years that you're most likely to be going to the places that you read about in high school, Paris or the Big Ben or whatever. Those are the years that you actually are getting like the highest return from even mediocre sign-up bonuses.
So in that sense, you should read frequent flyer resources to earn the points, but try to block out every advice and report about redemption, because if you follow the redemption advice, your first trips are going to be the Vendôme, of course, instead of going up to, you can't leave the hotel because you have to have 7 different meal services a day of whatever free is on offer.
So yeah, so like for example, I believe it was Vin at Miles Per Day, who very shortly after Jiro Dreams of Sushi came out, the iconic movie about the 4-star, 5-star, how many stars does Michelin give out? The bunch of stars, 3-star Michelin sushi restaurant, stays at the Park Hyatt Tokyo, and is able to get a reservation at Jiro's restaurant through the concierge of the Park Hyatt Tokyo. And that's probably the best way to get a reservation at like the hottest sushi restaurant in the world. But it shouldn't be everybody's first step when they're learning about travel hacking, is going out and having a 9-course sushi meal in Tokyo. There are probably things that would give them more immediate pleasure before that.
I've got to have Vin on, if nothing else, than when he wrote about Necker Island, it was the most points traveler. I mean, I love his sense of humor, but he said about Necker Island, it's more of an every other year kind of thing.
no, Vin's amazing. He won't come on my podcast yet. So if you get him first, I'll be very jealous.
I've been in Seattle 3.5 years. I got him for one lunch, a couple's lunch. So that's the one time I've seen him in the wild. So
and he refused to talk business, I bet.
I know it was a couple's one, so if I had talked business, I think actually there was a few minutes near the end where we were, and then both spouses quickly said it showed their boredom, and it was a quick wrap to a quick wrap to that. I mean, Gideon, I don't know your family situation, but what the player 1, player 2. How do you think about, because that's where a lot of emotions get in the way of math. It's so tempting to want additional socials involved in this, and that it can lead to a lot of emotion.
Yeah, it's something that has not been a source of. It hasn't sparked joy so far in my life. So, for example, on our honeymoon to Hawaii, I sort of like orchestrated this Aspire sign up bonus with the resort credit at the resort, and my partner like played along with it, but there's nothing fun about it for her to like charge a certain amount of the room charge to her credit card and a certain amount of the room charge to my credit card. It's just it's fun to travel together.
Yeah, I've long felt that the end of romance is when you have to impose changing hotels every night, because it's like, or at least the check-in, check-out, even if it's the same hotel. It's like,
learned very
can't we just have a
early
4-night
on to
stay?
not do that. Yeah.
The check-in, honestly, like changing hotels, which we did in our first like year or two of being together, was almost less stressful, because I would just say like, hey, we're staying our first night at the Radisson Blu, and our second night at the I haven't stayed at a Radisson in so long, the Country Inn and Suites, and then we're switching back to the Radisson, and then we're switching back to the Country Inn, and it's just like, all right, like I guess that's just what staying in hotels is like. But now it's a much heavier lift these days, so I normally just will redeem the points for the nights that we want.
Joe, we've got Michael Traeger in the audience of Travel Zork and Casino Loyalty, and both of you guys hang out with the Miles to Memories crew, and I feel like the Disney and the Vegas people are probably the same people, with maybe just one somewhere along the gene code, maybe one switch different, or not at all. Is that a fair observation?
Yeah, I mean, I love Vegas as well, and I think I that's a great way to say it, that there's like one codon that's different between Vegas people and Disney people. Maybe two codons, because if one codon's off, you only like one or the other. But then there's a lot of people who, there's this rare group where there's a Vegas, Disney, and travel hacking Venn diagram, but it does exist. So yeah, I mean, I think for both Vegas and Disney, like there's something about like the spectacle, and it's all an illusion, right? Like it's not really the most magical place on earth. Like you're not really going to get rich at Vegas, but some people, including me, like enjoy that illusion. So I definitely have felt the kind of connection between Vegas and Disney. It's like, again, you're checking off similar boxes. It's just like kind of a matter of the means to which you check those boxes off. But as a man child, they all work for me.
Yeah, I love all of the Travel Zork stuff that he's been going on a tour podcast that I listened to lately during Vegas's quote unquote reopening.
I need a picture of him smoking through the mask, by the way. Need that, Michael.
I love all that stuff, but the one thing that I love gambling and I love travel hacking, but the one thing I cannot like break through to is the idea of like not wanting to win at the craps table and like only being there to earn up your credit in upstairs in heaven. That's the one thing that I'll never be able to get over, is like not caring whether I win or lose, as long as I get my credit at the table.
And I haven't been to the Travel Zork conferences, but what I've heard is that it's eye-opening to have this mashup of the points travelers and the Vegas people, who there's a little bit of overlap, but there's a lot that are totally separate. And I'm wondering, if you think about, maybe Disney is a great way to learn how to travel hack a system, because it's more of a closed system. There's fewer options. I mean, when you guys do your podcast about 100 different hotel things, and it's not that closed of a system, but there's more of a defined answer, or you could say this is the right way to do this, or if your goal is to get on these attractions, this is the way to do it. Points hacking maybe is in the middle, and then Vegas is the most extreme. Or I feel like I know a lot of points travelers that have gotten tired of that, and then they become degenerate gamblers in that. But I don't know what's the system order for those three.
I think you have it right. Like I like what Gideon says about you kind of learn the systems that bring you the most enjoyment. I think the interesting thing, I'm not deep in the Vegas travel hacking community, but I have cursory observations of it, and sometimes I get dragged into weird Twitter wars with some very questionable people. Not Michael, of course, he's great, and travel fanboy as well. But like what I found, like listening to the Vegas people, and then of course, there's this evolution when you're a miles and points person. Like when you start, you're like, this is the only way to redeem things. This is like, you have to do this. If you redeem for a domestic flight, you're like wasting your miles and points. You say all this kind of dumb stuff. Maybe it's not exactly that, but we all like start with our own preconceptions. And what I notice about the Vegas people is, they are hacking different things, like whether they're hacking comps, which again, like Gideon, like I can't, like the concept of sitting down at a table and possibly losing $3,000 so I can get a suite next time. Like it just like does not compute. Right. However, there like lots of people, they enjoy doing that. And like, that is the system that they enjoy. And, we have to admit in this game that playing the game itself is also a form of enjoyment. So it's a means to an end, but then for some of it's also part of the end itself. And that's what I see with a lot of the Vegas people. Like, and I think it makes sense. Like a younger me would have been like, oh, they're wasting their time, or why would you risk the $3,000? But if that's what, ultimately we're traveling to enjoy life more, which is why this pandemic friggin' sucks. Although I'm glad we haven't talked about it yet. So sorry to break that, be the one to break that ice. But, like, you got to do what you enjoy. So if you enjoy, playing those games, and, hopefully getting the comps, hopefully winning, but even if you don't, like you get your elite status in the casino or anyway, then, all the more power to you. So, I do think though, like you said, Vegas is the most open. Like there's so many different directions you can go. Cause like you can go for comps, or you can go for cheap rooms, or, you can just go for gambling edge. Like if you just want to gamble, like, get the best edge over the casino. So, I do think it's kind of like the wildest of the Wests, and has the least rules, but maybe that's why Vegas people love it so much.
Yeah. But speaking exactly to that point, is in the before time, obviously when cruises sailed, there was the like direct overlap of the cruise ship manufactured spend opportunities that it seems crazy to get on a 7-day cruise in order to manufacture $25,000 in spend, unless you like cruising, and then you get to go on a cruise and manufacture $25,000 in spend.
For people that wouldn't know the context, how are you is it at the gambling tables?
Yeah, exactly. Just like opportunities to like add, you add money
credit.
to your gambling card from your credit card linked to your stateroom, and if you have, it depends on the cruise line, but on some of them, if you have elite status, then they don't charge you a credit card advance fee and they run it as a purchase. And on other ones, they just run it as a purchase for everybody. So like that's just like straight up manufacturing spend, but you have to be at sea for 7 days to do it, which is a heavy load.
Think how many free burgers posts from Doctor of Credit you'll miss in that week when if you're offline.
Yeah, I think I think that makes me think of like another important point, which is for like to be most, I don't want to say efficient because no one is going to be like fully efficient, but really when you're travel hacking, or when you're trying to like gain an edge or travel for like the least amount of money possible, like having multiple Venn diagrams really helps you, right? Like, because if you like cruising and you like gambling and you like elite status, like you can roll all those together into like one trip and like be enjoying your cruise while you are further rolling that forward.
Yeah, so you start in a normal stateroom, and then because of what you earn gambling on your first cruise, you get to a balcony stateroom on your second cruise. Yeah, absolutely.
But then if you enjoy cruising, gambling, and elite status, which you can also use on the land hotels, then like you're checking off multiple boxes at the same time. So, I think the more, not flexible, but like kind of the more broad your interests are, like, there's this, it's the concept of flexibility, right? Like the more flexible you are, the more multifaceted you can be, then you can do multiple things at the same time while like helping yourself out. And, I think that's a great tool of versatility that, works in travel hack. I mean, it works in life, but for travel hackers, like that's where it really comes into play, and we can really kind of get the most bang for our buck.
Speaking of that, I've looked at economic studies about the mental costs of poverty. And so if you're very low income, you're spending a lot of your mental energy every day thinking about how you're going to get food on the table, how you're going to cover rent, all of this. And studies have shown how much that takes over the brain processing power of a person. And I feel like I've inflicted that on myself with travel hacking, that when I wake up in the morning and I think, like this morning I woke up and thought about, I have to call Citi because my dividend 5% cashback didn't post. And that was the first thing I thought of this morning. And I don't want to do that. And I've been trying this year very hard to get all of that out of my head, because then the other corollary to that is these ideas like, dress like Steve Jobs, that if you have to make no decisions about what breakfast you're eating in the morning or what clothes you're putting on, your mind is freed up to do more productive things in whatever field you value. And I feel like we're probably all damaging our productive capacity by thinking of all of these points and all of these deals.
Yeah, I think that it's a good, I think it goes both ways. That if you get into a totally static rhythm, then when the rhythm stops working, then you panic and scramble, and that's bad too. And but if you're doing 100 different things at once, if you're trying every single new deal that we used to read about them on Flyer Talk, now we read about them in Discord or Slack or whatever, but even trying every single new thing that comes along, then yeah, there's stuff that's going to fall through the cracks, no matter how much attention you pay to it. So I think there's a balance that you have to strike there. I think that because we got into travel hacking in the first place, most of us strike the balance at doing more rather than less. Just like people who get into opera go to maybe one or two more operas a year than they really should. But yeah, definitely, like, everybody should be thinking about whether they're striking that balance at the right place, and whether they would actually lose anything by scaling back like a little bit, or whether they would gain a lot by scaling forward. Sometimes I'll look at a deal and think like, oh, I really should be doing that. That's actually a great deal.
And talk about scale, because I've since I haven't been traveling this year, I've had more time to get to know a broader selection of people and points, and some of these shadowy figures online known as whales or heavy hitters, and they're very open about they're doing 1, 2, maybe 3 deals or reselling type things, and they pay attention to nothing else. They don't care about an award chart. They'll pay the maximum price on an award chart because it's not worth their time to figure out how to get the saver. And compared to a lot of us, I guess I consider myself points omnivore, where I will chase freedom, 1,500 spend in a quarter, and they're like, just don't even bother. 1,500 spend, not even worth thinking about how to earn. So talk a bit about the importance of scaling and focus. Oh, we lost Gideon just when he was about to be brilliant. So we need Joe to be even more brilliant.
Oh yeah, well, good luck with that. But I mean, I think what scale gives you is it gives you a lot of wiggle room, right? So when you are really hitting a deal hard, like for example, there's a current deal at like a grocery store right now where you can buy some stuff and then you'll get like $25 in groceries. Like you can, load up hoping that it is in stock, but you can load up in toilet paper for, the next decade if you want, hitting that deal. So, I think the nice thing about scaling is you focus all your energy on the one deal that you're hitting. By the way, all these heavy hitters who scale one deal, they also are able to pivot to a new deal once that deal dies. Because when you're scaling a deal that's huge, that you're going to pivot. But when you're doing that, like what it does, it does free up a lot of brain space so that you don't have to like worry as much about, the little things. Because you're only focused on that one thing. So that works for some people. It doesn't work for me because I don't like, I don't know. Number one, I just can't get that into a deal unless it's like really good and I don't have to leave my house, which is very rare. And the other reason is, I get worried about being over leveraged, even though, you got to risk it for the biscuit. And I'm not willing to do that normally. Gideon does sometimes.
I will do it for the blog, but I'm mostly in the same position.
We're old men now. We're old men now.
Yeah, I've done some funny stuff for the blog, but I definitely know the like heavy hitters and the whales that you're talking about, and I think that's fantastic that there are people who are able to scale up that much. I just don't think it's that like relevant to ordinary people, primarily because the whales aren't willing to talk about what they're doing. So it's honestly like I don't even think about it for a minute. Like I will sometimes discover a deal. There was a great one probably 2.5 years ago where you could buy gift cards. It wasn't Dell. It was some computer company that you could buy gift cards through a shopping portal and then use the gift cards to buy additional gift cards. So there were no fees involved at all, and you could just like multiply these shopping portal gift cards over and over and over again. I did it like once or twice a day, so I was making, I don't know, 50 or $100 a day through these portal cashbacks, and then it died. And then somebody wrote to me because I'd send it out to my newsletter, frequentflyerbook.com, and they'd written back to me and said, "Hey, thanks. I made tens of thousands of dollars on that deal." And I realized that while I was doing it once in the morning and once when I got home at night, this person was sitting on their computer just cycling these gift cards all day for 3 weeks until they earned tens of thousands of dollars recycling these gift cards. And that's great. Like I'm glad they did it. I'm glad I could help. Like I'm glad it made them like so much money, but I'm not like jealous of them because I didn't have to sit in front of my computer recycling gift cards all day.
Yeah, I gotta like say that a lot of the stuff we're talking about is first world problems, or like I come from a place of privilege, right? Like this is a game to me, so that's why like, and my family is comfortable enough that I don't feel the need to like obsess over a deal enough to make like tens of thousands of dollars. I gotta, I don't know, spend time with my kids sometimes, or do my actual job. I respect the people who quit their jobs to do this full time. I don't think I'm mentally set up to do that, but I know there's a lot of people who do that, and I love hearing these stories. Like,
yeah, everybody loves a war story.
I've seen pictures of people with like entire tankers of gas. Okay, like these things happen, and it's so much fun to hear about. And generally like, you have to go on the equivalent of the dark web of Miles and Points to hear these stories, but they're a lot of fun whenever I happen upon them. So I love hearing stories from the whales. It's just a ton of fun, but I never could be one myself. I'm too weak sauce for that.
Huh. Let's talk a little bit about content and politics. Most people online are in terms of if they have a non-social media presence, so a blog or similar type venue, they aren't as willing to call people out by name. Certainly, Gideon, you will do so. You will pick fights or openly criticize and name other bloggers. You'll be very honest about your views. Like looking at your Bumped review, use Bumped to steal from venture capitalists. So I admire that, and talk about when you choose online to engage in a critical way with people, and when it's. I think for a lot of people that haven't taken on a website or blog, it's so easy to put out a quick Facebook post, and it's quite an elaborate thing just to put up a blog post. So if you're choosing to write about something, it means enough to you to go to a lot more effort than I think the audience may realize.
Well, I think that's. I want to thank you, but I want to walk that back because in a lot of ways I'm punching down often because I'm attacking people who, because of their affiliate relationships with the companies that they're promoting, are unable to respond. Now, I think that's one of the reasons why they deserve to be attacked, but I also understand why somebody might feel that they were fighting with one hand tied behind their back when I can say this offer is terrible because this card doesn't reward spend or doesn't reward points on manufactured spend, and they can't even say the word manufactured spend on their blogs. They have all of the catalog of words that they can't say that I can say because I don't get affiliate revenue, so I can say whatever I want. But having said that, yeah, like it's obviously like great to have a minor position in the blogosphere where people know that they can come to get honest input on what's going on right now, because there aren't very many places like that right now.
And on the political side, especially getting to know the very serious MSers, you meet a lot of people that will take very libertarian policies, you could say, and very, very harsh to crass social policies, and yet think nothing of making what I would say are gratuitous CFPB complaints and running to any government authority to help them get $50 back. And we all have these contradictions, but I'll just throw it open to you, the politics that you swirl in, Gideon, and miles and points, and how that experience of the points community and influences your broader political views.
Yeah, and I think it is a little bit broader than that, because just like the whales we were talking about earlier, and the fact that Joe and I aren't whales because we have responsibilities, that a lot of the people who find themselves in prominent positions in the miles and points community, in the blogging community, on Twitter, they all have me blocked, so I don't know what they say on Twitter, but sort of have the luxury of being extremely wealthy people who have very little to lose. And I think that they all like navigate that in different ways. Part of that is being able to go to Vegas and lose $10,000 in craps and think like, oh, well, that's the price of my comp for next month when I come back and get a suite, and that's fine. And some people think that they have achieved their position through work that anybody could do, and that the only thing holding people back is their lack of effort, and so they're entitled to everything that they come to, even if what they come to is ripping off newbies through credit card affiliate links. So the idea of saying like since I'm rich, I have this great blog, or since I have this great blog, I'm rich, and so you should follow me, even if it makes you poor, is pretty anathema to my politics of paying the most attention and doing the most work and trying to help people in the worst off positions the most, which is why I always say, start small, don't risk more than you can afford to lose, figure out whether this is something you want to do, not have you ever dreamed of flying first class on Lufthansa? That'll never be my starting point for anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of, it's not everyone, but that's a lot of our privilege. Like when we get into the miles and points game, that it is a game for us, right? Like we are just trying to save money on our travel so that we can travel more. It's very different. Like, yes, we take on a huge mental load as we're trying to like travel hack or whatever, but that's very different than, trying to, the mental load that you were talking about earlier about like putting the food on the table and stuff like that, And so, in my work, like I have, like I will talk to people who are like have to go to court because they're getting evicted, but then like their parents lost their job because they got COVID, like all this stuff that I don't have to worry about personally, that's happening like in the world, that is terrible. Like travel hacking, again, it's just like a game, and so I do think I'm not as critical as Gideon is, at least publicly, about these blogs and stuff like that. But like I think we need to understand that like a lot of us started in very much better positions. Like even Gideon, I don't want to speak for you, but like Mr. Perpetually Unemployed, right? And taking pride in that, like he's still starting off in a better place, or you're still starting off in a better place than like a lot of others. So, I do think it's fun to talk about travel hacking and stuff like that, but ultimately, like, I'm not as political as Gideon is on social media and stuff like that, but there are like real problems that are going on in the world that have nothing to do with the fact that JetBlue is not going to be blocking their middle seats starting in January, or American Express has this ridiculously good, by the way, 10x grocery offer like right now for the platinum card and stuff like that, and so like whatever small like following I have, like I'm gonna, like, why do I have this following if I don't talk about things that I feel like are at least more important than travel hacking? And then of course, the only thing that, like, if people unfollow me when I like talk about political stuff, which I don't even do that much, but like if they unfollow me because of that, that's fine. What you really should unfollow me for is whenever I talk about the Mets, because that's what's really clogging up your timeline.
Hey, how are the Giants doing this year?
I'm a Jets fan, and they all suck. So
I want to say one thing, not exactly in my own defense, but just to push back against something, is that one of the things about not being censored by affiliate links or Google AdSense or Amazon or whatever, is just that everything I put on my sites, in my newsletters, is something that I truly believe. And even if you think, and you Google something and often like the points guy will be the first hit that comes up. And it's not that the information is always wrong. It's that when you know that the information is contaminated by self-interest, there's something untrustworthy about it, whether it's right or wrong. So the one thing that I've always tried to be, even when I'm wrong, and I get so wrong all the time, is trustworthy, just because no one can bribe me. I don't know anything to anybody, so nobody can make me say anything that's not true. So whatever you find on my sites, on my Twitter feed, I got in a big fight about the tax deductibility of room and board scholarships the other day on Twitter. But whatever I say is what I believe. There's because just nobody has any control over me.
Yeah, I think
Anybody who wants to challenge that, just look at the top post of November 16th on his site is why are some Visa cards dropping collision damage waiver coverage? And if you wanted a topic that would go viral or that would bring advertisers, this would not be it. But it's of
what are you talking
interest
about?
to me.
It's the top of all of our minds, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I like, just to follow up on what Gideon just said, I like experience, like I've never had affiliate links myself, or I think Matt had affiliate links for us for like 2 weeks. And that's my only experience with like actually affiliate credit card links. But, there are, partnerships like, Disney has hosted me before, for example. Like I went on to like a conference with them and stuff like that. And, the thing about, I just like, personally, I can never say if I'm hosted by Disney, like I can never say, or even if they like, I got free Wi-Fi on a cruise once from them, right? Like I just cannot say that like what I'm saying is like completely unbiased, because like once someone has given you something, or even if that someone's paying attention to what you're saying, right? Like it is, I mean, it's Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Once something is being measured, it changes, so like I think that's the thing with affiliates. Like we can, like, I sincerely believe that, some affiliate bloggers are trying their best to be as unbiased as possible, but just humanly, at least in my experience, it's just impossible to be completely unbiased when that there's some kind of, stake in the game for you. Like, it might just be as subtle as just changing one word, right? Instead of saying like that a credit card is not great, you say it's okay, right? Like maybe it's just that subtle of a change, but and I guess this is just when money becomes involved with anything that used to be a passion project, it's just really hard to stay unbiased. So, I know people try their best, but I think we do need to be honest, and readers and listeners and watchers, I guess now since video is a thing, they all need to be honest and be like, you have to understand like where are people coming from and what kind of biases are creeping into them, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt that it's subconscious, but you still gotta view everything with that lens.
Yeah,
right.
The
I will read ones that if they say I took this, I'm disclosing this, and it didn't affect my opinion in any way, I won't read further. If they say I took this and it may affect my opinion, it's human nature, then I'll give it a try.
Right. The classic line is what is a possible conflict of interest? A conflict of interest.
Yeah. That that points guy cruise, the points guy writer who's on the cruise and did not disclose that it was comped or like compensated in some way until there was the COVID-19 outbreak on that cruise, within the last couple of weeks. Like when I saw that story like a week after it broke, it like blew my mind. Like how, I don't understand how you cannot disclose that, like, because the first articles were like, oh, it feels like cruising like normal. And then, 2 days later, it happened exactly as you would think it happened. But like, and I would much rather you be like, I agree. Like you have to at least disclose. Like if you're not disclosing, then I like what else are you hiding? So
their thing was always, we don't take free flights, but everything else is unmentioned.
Yeah, right? Free hotel rooms, free breakfast, free minibar, free meals.
Yeah, and leading toward, we've got some comments about political stands you all have taken, but yeah, it was that whole thing about the privilege of traveling. When people I've met in different social settings and wanted to get into this, I'll say, the best way to get into travel hacking is to have some corporate job that allows you to sit at a computer, browse the internet, and puts no demands on your leisure time to research non-work topics. And that, it's you're in an IT department, you're in an accounting department, and you've got this comfortable, safe workspace to diddle around. Because if you were, like Joe, I know a little bit about your work. Every day, all day, you are doing work that is helping society, and you're not having 6-8 hours a day that's just for browsing the latest offers. And that makes the travel hacking really you got to talk to we're taking up your travel hacking time now because the kids are finally in bed and it's almost 11 p.m. This is your your one shot. But I did see non-rev guy mentioning about some of the political stands and recap 2020 for each of you and what we promised travel outlook, and we haven't even gotten there. So what you're expecting for 2021, you can be as political as you like. We'll start with Joe and then head over to Gideon.
My personal 2021 travel outlook.
Yeah, recap 2020 for those that don't follow your mini podcasts. What decisions you've made, what your view on things is, and how you're approaching 2021 based on that.
Yeah, I mean, my last trip was in February. I had a trip to Vegas, like I think it was scheduled for March 16th, the first weekend of March Madness, whenever that was, 20 decades ago or whatever. And in early March, I like maybe a week before the NBA shut down, which is kind of the turning point for the country, quote unquote. I realized that was not going to happen. And then since then, we've been pretty much bunkered down here. We took a couple trips, road trips as a family, but, with this third wave that's been happening, like right now my son was in school in person, but we pulled him for the 2 weeks before Thanksgiving so that we can see my in-laws. We have not been seeing them inside since school started. They live 20 minutes away, but we've only been seeing them outside for walks and things like that. With the positive news about the vaccine that has come out in the last couple of weeks, like this is kind of like the first time that I've been actually feeling like more hopeful about travel. I have been booking and canceling Disney trips like nonstop during this pandemic, but these are all trips that I've been booking, like pretending to myself that I'm going to go, but deep down knowing that I was going to cancel it in the end. But with the positive news coming out, and hopefully I really am hoping that everyone in this country is just starts, I wouldn't say taking it more seriously, but just respect the COVID-19 and what it can do. Wear a mask, keep your distance. I hope that we can finally turn a corner after this third wave. Unfortunately, look like it's going to be brutal, but after that, I'm hoping we can turn things around so that I can travel again. I feel like if I can travel again, that means that we've started or travel again without, worrying about, I've long said, like, I don't worry about my family getting sick. I worry about the grandparents getting sick, or what would be even worse is getting someone sick that, I've never met, like that Maine wedding that they just did a study on where 7 people died because of that wedding and none of them were at the wedding. Right. Like these are the things that like I can't live with on my conscience. Obviously everything has to be balanced. Gideon's mom, who was on his podcast on the Milenomics Podcast Network, you should check it out. But one great thing she said was that she's super high risk because like all of our moms, she's old, and some other things. But what I really liked about what she said is we do have to balance protecting others with our own mental health. And so for her, and that episode was really good. She explained the thought process she went through in terms of, like balancing seeing her grandkids with putting herself at risk, putting others at risk. She did a lot of quarantining on both ends of the trip. I feel like that is the travel that I'm comfortable with right now. And I can say that my hope is to do travel like that in 2021. And then of course, if there's a vaccine, if things get better, maybe I can travel more like normal, like, take a weekend without even having to plan beforehand. But until then, I do think it's just a continual balance between, protecting others and my mental health. And right now I'm still not at the point where, I'm feeling so, I guess, boxed in that I need to get somewhere at that risk. So I don't know how you're feeling.
Need and want are two very different things. And I've appreciated as you've talked through this over the months on podcast episodes, like the struggle of you wanting to keep the grandparents away, because you don't want to feel the guilt of possibly infecting them. And they're saying, I'm going to see the grandkids no matter what, and that pressure, which is not part of something I have to struggle with. So that has been, I think, helpful to many people as you've been very open and practical and honest talking about it, because there is, of course, so much political emotion. There's so much emotion out of this, and you've been a great voice to that. Gideon, you can continue that, or you can tear it all up in flames. Take it wherever you want. Political rants, anything on your mind. Open mic.
Yeah. So I had easily our 2020 travel. We went to visit my partner's family at the beginning of March, immediately before cases started to spike. And I think actually the first case in Indiana was on the front page of the newspaper the day we got there. And then we did two 1-day road trip or 1-day drive trips, which went okay. And then we took one very ill-advised road trip, again, 1-day, 14-hour drive back to Indiana immediately before the third wave started. And that trip ended up being fine, but it felt like it heralded what was about to come. So Thanksgiving, Christmas off the table, but what I would just suggest, just in preparation for this, I was sort of thinking about the vaccine and stuff, and I actually would recommend anybody do this. I just drew up a list of the holidays and birthdays and possible travel opportunities coming up, because I think a lot of people are going to be playing it by ear, but if everybody's playing it by ear, then everybody's paying last minute ticket prices and last minute award prices for all of their tickets and all of their rental cars and all of their hotels. So I would actually I went all the way through Labor Day and just came up with all the possible trips, all of the cash prices, all of the award redemption prices, which I think is a really good exercise for anybody to do, just whether the vaccine makes it safe to travel in May or September, having sort of some action items in front of you instead of having to start from scratch once you happen to get a shot in your arm, sort of having those reservations already made and having something to look forward to, even if you have to cancel it. The other thing I'll say is that because we haven't been traveling at all, I've been doing a lot of earning, and there have just been some fantastic earnings opportunities out there. There's been a ton of grocery store earnings opportunities, ton of great sign-up bonuses. Chase has had some incredible accelerated spending bonuses at grocery stores. American Express, I haven't taken part in this, but I've just heard a lot about the, what is it called? 3-for-all, amazing referral sign-up bonuses. So, if we're not going to be traveling for another, 4 to 6 months, this is a great time to be earning as much as possible, because they're going to be shoveling points out of the door, and stores that still aren't able to operate at full capacity are going to be trying to attract as many customers as possible. So we've seen a great string of in-store bonuses. We've seen a great string of sign-up bonuses. We've seen a great string of bonuses for existing customers, and people should be, I think, focusing on building up those balances and focusing on the eventual redemptions they're going to make. And hopefully these vaccines work, at least one of them.
Yeah, I don't mind earn. I don't feel like I need to burn, because I will at some point use them. And again, going back to my B of A comments, cashing them out just feels like I'm giving up on fun, even if it makes sense to put them in stocks. Well, one of my themes is that, in closing, as a group, points travelers that choose to have a public profile, whether it's blog, podcast, and that, are almost as a population terrible at self-promotion, and with a few notable exceptions. So I will give both of you the opportunity to recap the many places that we can find you, subscribe, but I want I want to hear the real sales pitch of what we will get. So if we're on Gideon's newsletter, if we're subscribing to the Milenomics Patreon to get the podcast, what we will actually get, and also, and it's not a full-time business for either of you, but like Joe, why you've chosen to move to a newsletter format rather than a blog, and why you're putting a lot of effort on Disney versus points. Tell us, and Joe was actually part of last year in Boston at TravelCon when we did a roundtable of bloggers, and I think the audience has loved hearing that inside of why you're doing it, what medium, which format, all of that piece. So Joe, sell us on yourself, and also where you are and why.
Sure. So I have Disney Deciphered. That is a weekly Disney planning podcast. It's obviously been really weird during COVID-19, but we've been doing our best to, both Leslie, my co-host, who's West Coast based, she goes to Disneyland a lot more, and myself, neither of us have been to the Disney parks. I mean, Disneyland isn't even open, but still, we've been doing our best to stay abreast of what's been going on down there. If people choose to go down, we're not like actively encouraging people to go down, but people do go down. This is, again, one of those things where, like Leslie and I try to be honest about, like, we think it's not the best idea to go to Florida right now, but we host a Disney podcast. So, like, we talk about that on the podcast. However, this is what I'm saying. Like, there's always like a bias or like an angle that people are coming from, right? Otherwise, maybe some could argue.
And I enjoy listening even before the pandemic when I'm not going to Disney. I like the podcast.
It's much better.
I told you, even though I don't really care about Disney.
But like if someone said to us, it would be more responsible for us to shutter the podcast. I don't know. It's tough to argue that. Anyway, I'm doing a great job on selling it, but that you can find at DisneyDeciphered.com. We also have my original podcast, Saverosity Observation Deck. That's with myself and Trevor, where we interview just various guests from the travel hacking community. Both of you guys have been on Gideons, as regular as anyone gets. So that one, we just really enjoy talking to people. It's been really nice since late August to start actually talking to people about their trips again. It's been really great. Like, we just had someone who was on African safaris, Ivan, who's well known in many Miles and Points communities, and he got to talk about his safaris. That was like a lot of fun. And then finally, you can also find me not as an active a role, but I do the producing for the Miles to Memories podcast. On the podcast itself, I'm mostly there just to make jokes and insert witticisms that always fall flat. But those are the three places you can find me. I also have a newsletter, tinyletter.com/asthejoeflies, which is kind of defunct right now. But I would love to get back to writing that, but there's only so many hours in the day right now.
And about the newsletter versus blog, because there is a lot of even, say, very prominent journalists that have moved to newsletter type platforms. What about that experience can you ask for somebody that either has been blogging or is looking for an outlet for, say, occasional writing? They're not trying to build an affiliate empire, but the newsletter process.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about the newsletter and why everyone is going to newsletters, although Gideon just tweeted yesterday, the day before, no more Substacks, which is one of
society has progressed past the need for Substacks.
Yeah, which is one of the big newsletter platforms. But what I will say about them is, like, you don't sign up for my newsletter if you don't want to hear what I have to say, and that is very liberating, right? Because I guess I'm just hammer this theme one more time, right? Like, if you're writing to the public, you're worried about it's impossible to not worry about what the public will think of you. Like, even if you can let trolls roll off your back, it doesn't matter, right? Like, you're still like, it's public. Who knows who will find it? Who knows what you write that goes viral and you get all this crap for. Newsletter, like, you only sign up for my newsletter if you want to hear what I have to say, and it's very liberating. I think Gideon discovered this very early on. So he was Substack before Substacks existed, but I think it's great. Like, and you can just write when you want to write. You don't have to worry about pictures and stuff like that, which, like, I just hate all that stuff about actually blogging. I just like writing the pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, whatever you want to say. So, I think that's why a lot of people go into newsletters, though. In every single industry, you see people going to newsletters just because it's just the kind of like that direct line to people who actually want to hear what you want to say.
Fantastic. Gideon.
So you can find me at Free-quent Flyer on Twitter. You have to decide which E to leave out in order to find my Twitter account, or at freequentflyerbook.com. All of the E's are there on that one. And you can, if you search around Free-quent Flyer Book long enough, then you'll find the ability to sign up for a monthly subscription, which supports the blog, supports the Twitter account, and also gets you my occasional newsletter. My occasional newsletter is focused on my own experiments in the travel hacking space, normally the manufactured spend space, but also sometimes I just discover like hacking, like booking loopholes, or like the one I mentioned earlier, the shopping portal loopholes and things like that. I try primarily to write about stuff that I think would not survive long if it was posted in a public forum, but because everybody who is anybody subscribes to my blog and receives my newsletter, basically everything I write about eventually makes it out into the wild eventually. So subscribe if you want a first look at the stuff that you will later read about on Frequent Miler or on Miles to Memory or The Points Guy or whatever. And I also have a podcast on the Milenomics podcast network, which is also primarily focused on manufactured spend and travel hacking, but I try to make it a little bit weirder than some of the other podcasts out there, and interview people like my mom and my partner and my brother, and talk about just like weird stuff and how they view travel hacking. And in a week or two, I have a super special episode coming up with a English techno pessimist that I think should be really fun. So you can find that at patreon.com/Milenomics to get access to the entire Milenomics podcast network, or all subscribers just to my blog at frequentflyerbook.com get access to just my podcast episodes. So, but you're free to subscribe to both.
Your family is my favorite of your episodes, by the way, just so you know.
People do seem to enjoy hearing from people who have put up with me.
I don't know how many times you can go to that well, but you still got a couple times left at least. From one podcast to another.
That's fantastic. And we'll take the immortal wisdom of the Points Guy and get them both, was the original.
Absolutely. Why not both?
There we have the confluence of Gideon and the Points Guy on the same page. Thank you guys both for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much for having us. Thank you so much for the invitation.